Hello, and welcome to the Proficiency Level Descriptors training. By the end of this session, you will know about the proficiency level descriptors. You will understand how much English emergent bilinguals can understand, speak, read, and write based on their language proficiency level, and you will be able to demonstrate comprehension of the PLDs by determining the language proficiency levels. In the resource folder that was shown earlier in this Schoology course, you should have seen the instructional tool or the ELPS instructional tool. This tool will be beneficial for you to use during this course. Pages 14 through 20 of ELPS instructional toolbook is a great resource for you and a guide for you to use during this presentation. Teachers should use the PLDs throughout the school year as a formative assessment rubric to stay tuned to the English language proficiency level of their students. You should use it to monitor progress and to linguistically accommodate your content during your daily instruction. Benefits of using PLDs in instruction: teachers learn to make effective linguistic accommodations in class to support learning of academic subject matter and also learning of English language. Here are some key features of each proficiency level: beginning, intermediate, advanced, and advanced high. Beginning students have little or no ability to understand the use of English. They may know a little English, but not enough to function meaningfully in social and academic interactions. Intermediate students do have some ability to understand and use English. They can function in social and academic settings as long as tasks require them to understand and use simple language structures and high frequency vocabulary within routine contexts. Advanced students are able to engage in grade level academic instruction in English, although ongoing second language acquisition support is needed to help them understand and use grade level appropriate language. These students function beyond the level of simple, routinely used English. Advanced high students have attained the command of English that enables them, with minimal second language acquisition support, to engage in regular all English academic instruction at their grade level. This is a screenshot of the PLDs for listening. Take a look at each level. You will see a summary at the top, and then you will actually see bulleted descriptors that will help you when you're rating or identifying the language level for your students. This sample shows classroom speech that is not academic in nature. In each listening sample presented in the upcoming slides, it should be assumed that the teacher is talking informally to a class without making linguistic accommodations. This sample exemplifies what is meant by the second beginning bullet of the PLDs. Beginning listeners struggle to identify and distinguish individual words and phrases during social and instructional interactions that have not been intentionally modified for EBs. Text in bold red print represents text that might be understood. While the beginning students understand some high frequency words and phrases in English, the student is not able to make sense of the message the teacher is conveying to the class. An intermediate listener is able to understand much more of the message than the student at the beginning level. Typically, students at this level are able to understand key words and phrases to capture the beginning, meaning, or general or gist of the message. This sample exemplifies what is meant by the second intermediate bullet in the PLDs. often identify and distinguish key words and phrases necessary to understand the general meaning or gist during social and basic instructional interactions that have not been intentionally modified for EBs. In other words, in this sample, the student is able to understand a number of phrases containing simple high frequency words. These phrases, next week, put this in your backpack, take home tonight, are used very routinely in classroom settings, supporting EB's ability to make meaning of longer segments of speech. This student understood the basic gist of the message, but few of the important details. Intermediate listeners often require extensive linguistic supports to understand more than the general idea of what they hear in class. As indicated in the PLD, some listening accommodations include visuals, simplified language, gestures, pre teaching of the topic or vocabulary, slower speech, verbal cues, or repetition. The sample exemplifies what is meant by the second advanced bullet in the PLDs. Understand most main points, most important details, and some implicit information during social and basic instructional interactions that have not been intentionally modified for EBs. Advanced listeners are usually able to understand the main points and most of the details of this type of speech. Even when the message is not linguistically simplified, as shown here, there are still some gaps in understanding unusual constructions and word use in unfamiliar ways. This student is able to understand the main point of the message and most of the important details, such as the consequence of not bringing the form back, not understood by the intermediate listener. The student doesn't understand, however, how long the field trip will take and the idea of the parents volunteering to go to help out. Linguistic accommodations help a student at the level fill in these types of gaps. This sample exemplifies what is meant by the second advanced high bullet of the PLDs for listening. Understand main points, important details, and implicit information at a level nearly comparable to native English speaking peers during social and instructional interactions. Advanced high listeners are usually able to understand most words and details in routine spoken messages, even when the message are nearly linguistically simplified. This advanced high student understands what the class will leave after the announcements and be gone the entire day, and the student understands that the permission slip must be signed. However, the student does not understand what chaperone means and therefore doesn't understand what the parent will be able to volunteer for. These next slides show an example of speech that is academic in nature. As with the previous slides, it should be assumed that the teacher is talking to a class without making linguistic accommodation for EBs. This sample shows speech that a student might hear in a math class. In teaching students, teachers frequently give certain repeated high routine instructions. Open your books to page. Beginning listeners hear such instructions regularly and begin to memorize phrases, even without understanding each of the individual words. Beginning level students also acquire some academic vocabulary that they hear daily in highly predictable contexts. As shown in this example, the students understand some high frequency academic words: one, two, rectangle, circles. The understanding of such words in spoken messages is affected by how fast the person is speaking and the emphasis given to the words. In the example above, a beginning level student accustomed to using a textbook in math class may memorize the phrase, open your books to, but the student is likely still struggling to learn English words for numbers. When the teacher says page 172 at normal speed, the student may hear or understand only part of the number and therefore not turn to the correct page in the book. An intermediate listener understands more of the routine instructions heard daily in the classroom. Today we're going to study top of the page, today's lessons, and make sense of longer segments of speech. While students at this level are usually able to get the general gist of the routine, non academically complex interactions, they struggle to understand academic lessons that have not been linguistically modified. The intermediate level student hears and understands familiar content area words such as cylinder, rectangles, and circles. However, the teacher is attempting to teach students about the net of a cylinder. Because this lesson has not been linguistically modified, the student does not understand enough of what the teacher is saying to grasp the idea that the lesson is about a new concept called net. Note, all that even students of the intermediate level struggle to understand strings of numbers, 172 spoken at normal speed. Advanced level students have acquired enough English to understand the English used in discussing familiar academic topics and unfamiliar topics. This helps them gain more meaning when they learn new academic concepts. Because the teacher's lesson is not linguistically accommodated through the use of gestures and verbal cues, this advanced level student still misses important information. The student gets the right page and sees the definition of the word net, but can't distinguish the word in the teacher's speech as the teacher continues talking about it. The student also does not understand dimensional model, which is key to the understanding of net. The level of linguistic understanding of the advanced high listener is similar with minimal second language acquisition support to the linguistic understanding of native English speaking peers. This student is able to understand almost all of what the teacher said in the instruction to this lesson. The student does not understand the expression undivided attention, but still understands the point of the sentence. Reflect on how the students understand the English he or she hears during activities such as the following. This list of activities is non exhaustive. Teachers may identify other appropriate activities suited to the grade level taught. Here is the example of the PLDs for speaking. Take a look and review each bullet under each level. The following slides present speaking samples. At each proficiency level, the speech of the single student is presented. Each student responds to several speaking tasks that require the use of everyday spoken language. While students at the beginning level may have some ability to express themselves in English, as does this student, they rely on highly limited bank of vocabulary and only speak in sentences using memorized high familiar language. Most of the time, they are limited to using isolated words and phrases to convey meaning. These features are demonstrated in each speech sample of this beginning student, who is in the later stages of this level. This beginning student uses some recently learned content vocabulary, such as earthquakes, energy, and associated vocabulary encountered in the lesson shake, earth, die, fire, but her communication breaks down when she tries to speak in a connected way about the lesson. Similar to the previous sample, this student uses some recently learned and highly familiar vocabulary, but experiences a communication breakdown when trying to talk about today's lesson on Christopher Columbus. Immediate features represent in the four intermediate slides general ability to speak in sentences, short, simple sentences, basic vocabulary, emerging awareness of basic grammar features, the ability to recombine learned words and phrases to create simple original messages, speak best in present tense, Overall, the ability to speak in a simple manner using commonly heard English. Although telling about where he used to live requires past tense, the student uses the present tense. Primary language and second language acquisition features are frequent: hat, up, on, the hair, jacket of square, black and white, the man looks, the duck, what is swimming. This speaking task requires the ability to explain the rock cycle, which requires the use of more complex language structures and specific, less familiar academic vocabulary. The student is able to speak using the academic vocabulary he has been learning. However, the student pauses frequently and has more difficulty communicating than in the previous slides due to the increased language demands. Limited English vocabulary and language structures greatly affect the student's ability to connect ideas and explain this complex process. Overall, communication is hindered. Here's an example of an advanced speaker. The advanced speaker is able to describe in some detail using basic English grammar structures, able to narrate basic present, past, and future tenses in some detail. They have vocabulary to speak comfortably and fluidly on familiar everyday topics. Overall, the ability to speak using grade appropriate English with second language acquisition support. The student has grammar structures necessary to make comparisons. My tooth fell, but hers didn't. I don't collect stickers, but she does. We both like to play a lot. The student makes minor second language acquisition errors that don't interfere with communication. The student in this example is able to speak comfortably after a past event on a familiar topic. As compared to the intermediate level, vocabulary and progressing from general basic to more specific descriptive: mud, slippery, trampoline, slipping. The student shows an emerging ability to use complex and longer sentences. This student uses content based language to talk about a familiar academic lesson. The advanced high speaker should be able to participate in extended discussions on a variety of social and grade appropriate academic topics, communicate effectively using abstract and content based vocabulary, use many of the same idioms and colloquialism as a native English speaker, use complex grammar structures and complex sentences to narrate and describe, minor errors, overall, ability to speak using grade appropriate English with minimal speaking support. This student elaborates with ease about a common school related experience, having difficulty reading and taking reading tests. The student uses idioms and colloquialisms. I don't get it. I scored low on. I'm getting high scores. Reflect on how the students speak English during activities such as the following. This list of activities is not exhaustive. Teachers may identify other appropriate activities suited to the grade level taught. Think about activities that provide good indications of students' speaking proficiency levels and differences observed when EBs with different proficiency levels speak during cooperative group, classroom discussions, or oral presentations. Here's an example of the writing rubric for the PLDs. Remember that the writing of students in grades 2 through 12 will take place online. We will no longer have to rate samples. Remember that incorporating appropriate writing and speaking activities in subject matter instruction helps EBs internalize new English vocabulary and language structures. This helps them to improve their command of academic English and learn the content taught in their classes. Plan activities that incorporate reading, writing, listening, and speaking every day. Now you will take the quiz that is provided in the Schoology course. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.